top of the morning, good afternoon, good night. Wow, whenever you're listening to this, welcome to a new episode of the X Button. This is one of your hosts, Alejandro Segovia, and with me is my quite sick, quite ill
Uh,
co-host,
yeah,
Paul.
because I be dropping them sick beats all the time. You heard. I have had the flu and it's been miserable. Um,
Uh,
on the plus side, I've been on the back end of it, and I'm feeling better, strong enough at least to record this. Which is why we're just a little bit late in recording, but I am confident that we are going to be on the back of this upswing. I'm not going to relapse back into the sicknesses.
so,
But
Paul, how many coronavirus jokes have you gotten since you've been ill for the whole week?
one when you told me. Crazy enough, nobody's really mentioned the coronavirus. I don't know. I guess I've just been like reclused enough that nobody's been around to say anything about it. I didn't even think about that joke. I should have made it a million times, but I guess being sick with the actual flu just made me so miserable that I didn't even think about it. And that is a miserable failure on my part, and I'll take responsibility for it.
Hey, sometimes you're the guy where some jokes just fly over your head, kind of like Drax the Destroyer.
That is
So
very true.
I am not surprised.
But
So,
I'm a steel trap on other ones. Just sometimes it's rusted open.
all right. But so, Paul, other than your sickness, how's your last week been? Because it always feels like forever whenever we record one of these.
hmm
And
It's
yeah,
well, I guess if you want to segue into whatever we've been playing, seeing, or hearing, at least in this week. So
hmm
for playing, I haven't really played too much, especially nothing different because of. Well, that's not entirely true. We'll get into that one segment later, but for the most part, I have been watching a couple of new shows on Netflix when you don't really have the strength to do anything outside of like
hmm
tape your eyes open for a few hours when you can't sleep. I've been watching a lot of New Girl and
oh
a
yeah,
lot of The Good Place.
yes. How do you like the Good Place? It's
So,
amazing, right?
I the first time I tried it was actually maybe like a year ago, at least like a few months for sure, and I did not get sold on it at all because I didn't know any of the twists and turns. I really like I tried the first episode, I got about 20 minutes in and I went this is just isn't doing it for me cuz I don't know, like I was in the middle of my craze of like the heavier comedy, like Good Place is a lot more subtle. It's a lot
hmm
just it's more about the plot than the actual like jokes that are being said where like something like Parks and Rec or The Office, it's this is this crazy situation that's specifically been brought up so that a bunch of characters can rapid fire a bunch of really good quick jokes slash references. And then The Good Place is more of this almost like a mystery to it that like it was still funny but it was a different kind of funny, and I wasn't jiving with it at first, but when we restarted it this time, um we being my fiance and I, we were enjoying it a lot more. And then once we got to the twist at the end of season one, I was sold for sure on it because I was like, man, forget all this comedy. I just want to know what happens next. This is crazy.
So it finally hit you that they're in the afterlife.
Well, they were already in the afterlife, but
Uh-huh.
spoilers for anybody that has not seen at least up until the first season. On the end of the first season of The Good Place, is that they are not in the good place; they are actually in the bad place, and they are specifically being tormented by Michael and everybody within the quote unquote good place. And once I hit that she realized it, the whole show took like a whole different turn, and it felt like something out of I know you probably wouldn't get this reference, Alejandro, but anybody listening, it is basically the plot of The Promised Neverland, one of those amazing anime series of kids that are trapped in like what looks like a paradise, and they realize slowly that there's a lot more going on and they have to escape. And my goodness, that is not what I expected out of an NBC comedy show. That was
But
like
hey,
deep thinking there.
that's what a lot of people are calling one of the best comedies over the last few years, and it recently ended. Also,
Yes,
this
I did
past
hear
January.
about that.
So, like one show that didn't overstay its welcome, like The Office,
Mm,
another NBC comedy from
true.
yesteryear. So, anything else, Paul?
Those two shows are really most of what I've been watching. I've been thinking about even uh getting the DC streaming service while I've
Hmm.
had this opportunity to just like watch a bunch of DC things because I haven't seen DC movies in several years now. Not necessarily because of any kind of like product loyalty. I just somehow never got around to watching a lot of them, and they've kind of stacked up on me instead of wasting money on renting each individual movie or find wasting the time to find them pirated. Thought maybe I'd just do the streaming service for a month or two and check it out.
There's so much,
There
like from
really
like
is.
DC's past in the DC universe, have plus the shows that I told you a couple episodes back.
Hmm.
For like any DC fan, like the DC Universe app has like totally justified its existence. So, if you can at least do the 1 week trial to see where you can browse there, I
Hmm.
really like that app just for the comics. Like I really love
And I
sometimes
forget they
finding.
have comics.
Yeah, it's like it's similar to Marvel Unlimited that you pay like a subscription and you have like this huge catalog of comics
Oh,
and
so it's not just like their streaming stuff. It's like
it's all of
everything.
it. It's literally all of
Oh,
it.
that's
Yeah,
cool.
I highly recommend it.
Neat.
So, or anything else, Paul?
I think that's about it for me. Being sick kind of knocked out a lot of my life, at least for this week.
Oh well. The good thing is I haven't been sick, and the good thing is that I had the will and the strength to finish Call of Duty 2 on veteran,
Oh, yes,
all
that's right.
27, all 27 missions, and getting all 1,000 achievement points on of the 360. Man, I am so glad I got that out of my system because I didn't know if I had the will to stand like infinite grenade spamming and unlimited Nazi teleportation behind you
Mm,
uh, any longer. And that's something that I had just realized because I'm making a point of actually playing every Call of Duty game this year again. I kind of just had a kick because I have them with me, so I'm like, yeah, I kind of want to replay all of them, see how far it's come. And boy, like some of the design decisions they've made, like in campaigns of how they eliminated like the invisible line that stops spawning enemies, how that completely changed everything, like in the way like the combat dynamic works in that thing. Because sometimes if you were not moving, enemies would just constantly respawn and respawn and respawn and respawn and respawn, dot, and unless you hit like a weird arbitrary line. And I think it was in Modern Warfare 2 where they eliminated that, which
hmm.
is what made that one of the easier veteran difficulties back in the day. Because I remember, because I did get the platinum trophy in Modern Warfare 2 back in 2010, um, and it was tough, but not as tough as like the old ones, or like
Hmm.
even another one like Call of Duty World at War, which was I literally one time I got so mad I ejected the disc and dropped it in the
Oh,
floor. That's how angry he got at trying to get through that game and better and back in the day. So yeah, I got to finish that. Still got to play a little bit more of Dreams just to see what else. People are getting incredibly weird with Dreams. I tell you, like
I've seen a couple of
oh
things,
god,
both from the really great and the really weird.
yeah, it's literally. I feel this is modern day machinima. Who have actually
Mhm.
like Flash memory, whereas like people are doing all this weird animations with Flash. I feel like all these weird people are have found like their place here, and I just am not gonna just put like go to YouTube and put weird dreams creations, and boy oh boy, it's like watching a fever dream with that thing.
Yeah,
It's
really.
really it's really cool seeing like that level of creativity, but also the kind of weirdness that like pops out of people's minds whenever you give them the freedom. Uh,
True.
Still playing finally reached a point where I could finally take a little break from Destiny 2 because I just finished their battle pass for this latest season, which those things really take. Oh man, that is like that's like the definition of grind. Like because Fortnite introduced this whole battle pass system of
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, instead of like we know loot boxes are like all the craze these days of like how they're like being monitored by governments and all that. We're getting doing away with that. Here's a battle pass. You earn as you level up, you earn these rewards, and literally every game adopted it. Even Modern Warfare, last year's Modern Warfare, also has a
Mm-hmm.
battle pass. Also, it's like it's crazy. It's kind of neat because like you see what you can earn, and it's like, oh, you're actually leveling up.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. But eventually, whenever you're like up against the clock, and especially when a new season's like right around the corner, as we'll talk in the news, uh, it's like I did something I don't feel proud of.
Spent more
I yeah, I did that. I was like level. I reached level 90, and I had like a week and a half, and new some changes happened in my life recently when it comes to job and all that.
mm-hmm.
That I just started like I'm not gonna. I just started thinking I'm not gonna have the time to finish grinding this off, and I'm kind of feeling a little sick of this running the same lost sectors over and over again, like doing like this weird cheese. Um, so yeah, I paid $10, literally a
Dang.
dollar per level, to just be like, yeah, Bungie, I'm paying $10 to not play your game anymore and get all your rewards that are gonna go away because they tend to go away.
True.
So
Been there.
yeah,
I've been thinking about doing the same thing for the latest Apex Legend Battle Pass because some of those gun skins are really tempting, and
hmm
I don't want to waste waste the time, all that work that I've built up, and then get to like 80 or 90 and then miss out on the last of it. So I told myself
hmm
if it gets down to like the last day or something, I'm buying whatever
that's when
levels
you're
I have
doing it.
left.
Yeah. Yeah, and to me, it's like I was almost tempted to be like, I want to do this all until the last day. But my thing is that I don't know if I will be playing very in depth the next season of Destiny because we're getting close to now the release tsunami. We're actually now in the month
True.
where that wave is, where that release tsunami is finally hitting us. So it's so and like I've always said that Destiny is like my crack cocaine. Like I'm not even kidding. Like that's always how I think about that game. Like as soon as I start playing it, I feel like I neglect everything around my life, and I think I've said this many, many, many times
Hmm.
because that game is that addicting to me. So yeah, I decided. Yeah, that's why I decided. Yeah, I'll just be done with this, take a break, and just see what as we'll talk a little bit later. A little plug
Hmm.
in for news. Just to
Yup.
see, yeah, I'm gonna look into see what the next season is. If it's worth buying the battle pass for that season, or if that's the season that I take a break. It's but I didn't want to reach the new season already burnt out. I wanted to take that a little bit of time to play other games that I have.
True.
So yeah, so that's the extent of the things that I've been playing. But man, now like literally this week the new Division expansion came out, so I have to get on that. And then next week is Ori and the Will of the Wisp. God, and then the week after that is Doom. So yeah, exciting times. As for what I've been watching, I recently just finished watching the first season of Shadowhunters, like I mentioned
Oh yeah.
last week, and yeah, I like that show. Yeah, it's like I think that says everything about the kind of show that I like. That
I've lost another one.
yeah, yeah, it's it's just that kind of weird show that just entertains you. Like you know, some things are bad, but there's some things that are good, and you kind of take the good with the bad, and it's just kind of addicting. So
Freaking
yeah,
Cassandra Clare
yeah,
stealing our youth like this.
yeah. I'll say this though. I don't think I've ever seen a show so overtly gay as this one. Like,
Right?
good
Like
lord.
nothing against it, but man.
No, no, but not, like not to be like a homophobe or anything. Like I accept there, like everyone has their own likes and all that, and yeah, I've seen a lot. Even like my favorite thing, the Arrowverse, also deals with some gay stuff, but I feel there's just something very interesting to see how deep it gets into the psychology of that kind of thing coming out, or like some of like the weird sexual tension between like two male guys. That I'm
Mhm.
like, oh man, this is interesting. But other than that, weird thing is like it's just yeah, I enjoy that show, and it's kind of like whenever I want to go like not feeling like playing or anything, I just watch it. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't. There's just something about it. I don't know what it is. There's just something that it just grabbed me. So also, recently watched this movie. I think you've probably seen it. I don't know. You heard of Brightburn?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
The super the sort of Superman movie, or kind of like Elseworlds Superman tale of like what would happen if the actual kid was actually evil and like really like all twisted and all that. It's
Yep.
yeah. I watched it with my family yesterday, and that thing was messed up. Like
Mm-hmm.
wow, like I never expected that you can make something horror out of it, like a character that's pretty much Superman. But like that really tells you that there is a way to do that, and that movie actually does it really well, and surprisingly pretty lean. 90 minutes. I'm like, hi, it's been a while
Huh.
since I watched a movie that's only an hour and 30 minutes, and it's like, man, there's a scene where the kid tortures like this mom that's like a waitress, and like breaks all this glass around her, and one of those glass pieces hits her eye,
Oh.
like right in the eye. It's like stuck there, and you actually see it, and then you see her try to like get it out. Oh man! And then you see how she looks in her perspective. Like half of it is like all red, and I'm like, oh, this is how it would feel like. It's yeah, it's like for anyone that likes a good like adult take on superhero, I think I would say give that a shot. It's very interesting.
Hmm.
So, and then from what I've been listening, nothing else. But Paul, actually, there is one thing, another thing that I played because it kind of
Mm-hmm.
shadow dropped on us. Because just for context, today, uh, it's actually would have been a very big day, other than Super Tuesday for all those Americans that are right now voting on their primaries. Uh, do you go vote?
I didn't even know that was a thing.
So yeah,
It was
supposedly,
not
yeah,
well advertised, apparently.
yeah. Apparently, something called the Super Tuesday. It's like for anyone that is into politics, it's happening as it is a recording. So I think that's more for Democrats. So I don't think you're one, but let's not get into that. So that's
Yeah.
probably why you didn't know. So
Honestly, I feel like I wouldn't have known anyway.
exactly, yeah. So today, had things gone differently,
Mm-hmm.
today would have been the release of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Like from when,
Man, you're
yeah, it
right.
was that. Yeah, that was when they released. They announced the release date back at E3 last
Oh, I
year.
would have loved to be playing that right now.
Yeah, but Paul, good news because apparently the game is so far ahead and almost so complete that Square Enix did us the courtesy of being like, you know what, you would have been playing this game. Here's the demo.
It is not the same, but I accept it
I
begrudgingly.
Yeah, but you know what? I wanted to try it because I always like to try any game as much as I can because you never. It's always a crapshoot. You never know if you're always gonna like a game or if you're not gonna like it based on maybe previous history or how it feels and all that. But
Mm-hmm.
this is literally gonna be topic of the show because I'm impressions
Mm-hmm.
of Final Fantasy VII Remake. Paul, what do you think of the 45 to 60 minutes that we got to play of that game?
I went into that game demo with hardly any expectations outside of the visuals that I'd seen. And I want that game so badly
So
now.
badly, right? Right. I am blown away. Like I literally was blown away playing through that thing because I think this that Final Fantasy VII remake may have forever ruined turn-based games forever for me.
Mm.
Like
I mean, it
I
was kind
couldn't
of
go back.
ruined for you already,
Yeah,
but
it was already bad. It's like because I gave Persona 5, like I gave Persona 5 the good old college try. I played 10 to 15 hours until I realized, yeah, I'm sick of this having to wait through these menus, wait for the attack, and then having to go through through victory screens every single
mhm.
time. I just don't have the patience for that on a console. And just seeing how Final Fantasy VII like smartly combines both being like a button masher but also requires you to like slow down and pick a very specific attack while not
Yes.
feeling like you're taking turns while still keeping you on your toes as you're dodging
And
and
I
switching
have
the character.
actually a specific point I can mention the comparison between how it's not a button masher
Uh-huh.
because my brother is a very like love you Cody, but he's not the most strategic when it comes to like fights. Like he's the very much like I'll play Call of Duty, I'll do my thing, I'll hit the button, watch the enemy die.
Hmm.
But he doesn't really bring across some of like the more intense and complex levels of when he tries to like accomplish something. So when he had apparently played it before I did, and he was like getting all cocky at me when I put 20 minutes for the timer. I had the normal difficulty, and he's like, "Yeah," I was like, "It was good, but there were a lot of really difficult and frustrating things to fight on there." I was like, "What are you talking about? It's a demo." And sure enough, the big enemy shows up, and I can't remember for the life of me the name of it back in the day.
Like the scorpion thing, like
Yeah,
near the end, kind of
the
like that.
main boss basically,
Hmm.
and which we can even go into later on, like differences between this and the original game, but I won't get into that right now. uh he was like, all right, tell me how you do against that, and I decimate this thing because I had so much fun jumping between me and Barrett to use all our powerful moves to like blocking the different things, which I'm convinced he didn't even know block but was a button that you could hit.
R1.
Yep. Probably didn't even read the instructions, and it was wild because I was just flipping around back and forth between the characters, the moves that
Hmm.
you could do, the spells, stunning the enemy, and then jumping into Cloud to use his mega moves. I don't know why I just said that
It,
instead of Limit
yeah,
Break.
it's just so smartly designed. Like, you have to button mash to like build that APV, and everything
Hmm.
you do with your command menu, like from using your potions, from like you casting the spells, even though there's also magic involved, to
Hmm.
even some of the attacks, everything like it's built on that APV, and it's smartly balanced so that you can always be like hitting, and feeling like that kind of almost Kingdom Hearts like level of satisfaction from like hitting,
Yeah.
but it's not quite that, because obviously in Kingdom Hearts it's just literally just pressing the attack button over and over and over and over and over again. You
Hmm.
kind of can do that, but like fights would take forever, and
Right.
it's not like the point. And getting to like combine like hitting square and
And you're
slowing
gonna
down with
waste a lot of health. You're
the.
gonna waste a lot of time doing that too.
Yeah, and then slowing down and choosing like the specific attack, and then switching to your other character as you kind of like still attacking, and your other character is doing that. It
Hmm.
just feels active, like it feels exciting. It feels like you are actually controlling everything. You're not just waiting,
Yeah.
and that's always my big pet peeve of mine in turn-based games. Like I choose here, let's hope this attack him. Okay, did it happen? Oh, it missed. Oh, was this a critical hit? Okay, okay, here comes the attack. Hopefully this is not gonna. Oh crap, that was a one-hit kill. Now I have to use my Phoenix Downs or my revive potions or whatever. That's always been me with turn-based games. And in this one, it's like, no, oh, the attack is coming. No, you gotta dodge. Like it's like it's it gives you kind of like that almost Devil May Cry style control of like you. It's almost immediate how quickly you can dodge and how quickly you can attack and all that. But
Hmm.
you gotta also like parse your APBs and keep battle awareness of like, oh yeah, those enemies are all the way there. You're switching to Barret because he has a machine gun arm that can hit. And then you have like that overcharge. If you keep like pressing triangle over and over and over and charging that overcharge meter, that actually like builds the stagger meter, if you actually know that, way quicker than
Hmm.
I anticipated. It's just it was a very I don't know, there was just something arousing about playing that demo, and on top of that, what
Maybe
an
choose a better word, but I'm following you mostly.
yeah, yeah, I'm trying to censor myself because I almost said another word of how that
I,
how that thing made me feel.
that was you censoring yourself?
Yeah.
Oh gosh,
Exactly. So yeah.
give me an aneurysm.
Yeah. So yeah, there was just something. I think right now the only thing that I'm thinking about is like how long will the game be? Because remember, this is still considered this is still they're making a full game out of the whole Midgard section from the original
Right.
game. But if this is the quality, if it's like, because I can't visually, I'm like, this is the generation where I feel like games are just pretty all around. Like it's almost getting too redundant, especially by last year. Whenever we had that Stranding, whenever we had RE2, whenever we had Control, whenever we had even DMC5, I would even throw that there.
Mm-hmm.
Like even Modern Warfare, it's just like games have just gotten so pretty that it's just becoming even Gears 5. Like things are just becoming so like pretty that it's almost like not even that impressive saying that something's just pretty.
Mm-hmm.
But I would even dare say like there's something really special about the visuals in this thing. It's like there's just something. It's just it feels like magic. I don't know.
The
Like,
the
it uses
lighting is
particles,
fantastic,
the
and
lighting, the
I agree.
transition. Like I feel like because we this is the generation of like cutscene to gameplay transition have gotten very close and almost imperceptible. I feel this is the one that finally is like equally pretty all around. Like that, at least that's the way how I perceived it, and especially how like everything's lit, like the amount of detail, like the imagination of that original game being realized with this amount of detail. It's unless somehow they screw it up.
Mm,
I'm calling it now, Paul. I know Cyberpunk and Last of Us 2 are coming.
don't you dare!
I I think this will be my game of the year. I I
Oh,
think that's how much that demo like has made me feel just after since I played it yesterday. I was like, wow, like I can't believe they did it. I was like I feel of all games that could have gone wrong, I feel Final Fantasy VII Remake would have been one, especially because Square, when it comes to Final Fantasy, has been screwing up for so long. Like, remember,
true.
15 took them 10 years to make when it was back versus 13. So, and then, like, originally, this was going to be made by the Naruto guys, the people that made those Naruto games, CyberConnect 2. And then they yanked that game
Huh?
out from them and brought it in house. So it
Smart
was like,
move on their part, definitely.
exactly. But then when you hear all of those things and you're like, oh, you announced this back in 2015, the thing hasn't even started development, and then this was being developed by not even your internal team.
Mm,
So for them to like bring it in house and find something very unique in its combat and doing it like this, I feel like if this really like is a very respectful remake like RE2 was last year,
I'm getting the same
and
vibes as well. There's a lot of
exactly.
love and care put into this.
Exactly, and I'm really appreciate that they're doing that because especially me as someone that knows of Final Fantasy VII, recognizes the characters from Kingdom Hearts and like the Advent Children movie, and I kind of even know some of like the late game twists because they're like always in lists of like the biggest, most impactful gaming moments. When people make those lists, something very specific that happens in Final Fantasy VII is always like high up there. So I've known it, but I've always wanted to experience it, but I never knew if I could because try to go back to the PS1 game, it looks horrendous.
Hmm.
And I know graphics shouldn't be the be all and all, but there's just something from going to where we are right now to going to that kind of like pre-rendered backgrounds with blocky characters.
Yeah.
So it's really I thought I was gonna like it because it was gonna be more actiony. Since as soon as I saw that there was gonna be some bottom matching, I'm like, oh, I'm in. Yeah, and that was from my very beginning, especially because of how much I like Kingdom Hearts and gameplay. Because oh yeah, there's a lot I like. It's just hitting buttons because it feels like you're in control. But seeing what they've done it, I'm like, man, I really hope it catches on and like it really. I know this is gonna be successful, but I hope that it's not just a commercial success, but also critical success that people see what they did and feel like, hey, I think this is a nice way to evolve turn-based combat. Maybe
Hmm.
then more developers will do that and make it like keep that kind of strategy and menu management, but not just make it a waiting game. Then maybe I'll play more turn-based RPGs because that's just not my kind of game. So yeah, I'm like, I can't wait for April 10th. Like, man, like, wow, yes, wow.
Yeah, for real. And I think it does one other thing as well that I kind of picked up on last year when they dropped the Resident Evil 2 was that it brought in so many people that had never experienced the original, myself included on that side. Because for one thing, I mean, realistically, I was way too young at the time to be playing it, even though some people had been able to sneak that past. And by the time I was able to play games of that caliber, there's just something that you miss when you try going back to a game like that. When you're trying to understand why it's so great and you can respect it for what it did, but for like a modern understanding, you lose a lot of that. And I missed out on a lot of that by trying to replay a lot of those older games, going by my old game trader, my GameStop back in the day when you could pick up those old games on PS2, PS1, and stick it in your old system, try to play at your best. But with that Resident Evil 2 remake, it made me realize that all these younger crowds that are now coming of age that can play this game, and then they're saying, "Oh, I get it." And this is the exact same vibe that I'm going to get from it. And I feel like Final Fantasy VII is such a timeless game telling this kind of a story that, like, the modern setting, the feel of us or Midgar sucking the life out of the planet, the whole idea behind that, especially nowadays, not to get like political at all with it, but
With climate change
this
and all that. Mhm.
I feel like the story is like way even more poignant, and also the whole corporate control of literally everything, because
Mhm.
the man, I can't remember, the Midgar Electric Power Company, I believe is the name of it, that Shinra, that's what it was, Shinra
Mhm.
Electric Power Company controls literally everything in that city, and it takes the crew to like get out of there through the slums to escape into this world that is actually huge, that you understand like this overbearing control that the company had on it. And what better way now that we're living in this world with like 8 companies that rule literally everything.
Mhm. Yeah, so it just feels more timely. Kind of like how Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty
Mm-hmm.
actually very scarily predicted about like the internet age
Mm-hmm.
and echo chambers and all the things that social media has created with the advent of Twitter and all that. That was in 2001. And then when you see like that final, whenever this, I don't know if you remember how MGS2 completely goes off the rails near
Yeah,
the
with the
end.
president.
Yeah, with like the president and with the AI speaking with you
Yeah.
and kind of like explaining all that. And that's when that thing came up. And back then it was just like, this is just too fear mongery techno mumbo jumbo from Kojima. And then you see, I was like, oh my God. It was like, he actually predicted it based
Mm-hmm.
on how our society has been behaving since.
And I
Like,
want to point out to everybody that it was also Hideo Kojima with the Metal Gear Rising Revengeance that he predicted the "Make America Great" slogan, and
Jesus
it's
Christ, wow.
yes, that
Wow,
was
you're
said
right.
before any of that other stuff. And it was also this dude that was literally talking about building a wall, taking on the rest of the world to start wars and control them. And
Kojima is in the same level as The Simpsons.
go play that game again and try not to like get really uncomfortable near the end of the
Oh,
game.
oh God, yeah, I have to because it's on Xbox One backwards compatibility. I'm gonna give it a
Yes.
whirl.
And they're also one
That,
of the first times that I ever heard the word meme, and I didn't understand what it was. And they actually like give it a definition, and then I
mm.
found out about the concept of memes like way later. So yeah,
Oh
that's
gosh, man.
that game had some stuff in it.
I told no every Kojima game, like even like freaking Death Stranding, is a pro life game.
Yeah. Wow. Wait, really? Oh, huh.
Keeping the baby alive.
I mean, I feel like you could just catch that through a lot of other stuff. I didn't even think about that part. I was thinking more of the rights this fabricated human has because it's not born. So yeah,
Mhm.
okay, I'm starting to see it.
Yeah, actually, yeah, Kojima, like, he may look like whenever you see that man, like he looks so like nice and innocent and all that. But man, some of the things that he has in his mind, that's what makes his game special. That's what makes those
Yeah,
games special. But
there's
back
some
to
wild stuff. Anyway,
Man,
yeah.
yeah, but Final Fantasy. And apparently, at the same time as this demo dropped, like a lot of media places were they actually want to play the game a few weeks ago. Square Enix invited them to play, and so they could do like a big preview. Apparently, Square Enix let them play 4 hours of that
Oh,
game.
I wish I could be that.
So you know what that tells me, Paul? That
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 it's a
game's
lot
gonna
more than
be,
4 hours.
oh yes. So
I
because just
really
for
hope
context,
so.
because
Oh
they just
gosh.
because let's just keep in context, because apparently from what I was digging up, 4 hours is how long it took you in Midgar back in the PS1 game before
Yeah.
you got out. So from what I was hearing from some people, if you were like not getting stuck fighting some of the bosses or getting stuck in the minutia, that's how small that. But apparently, like if Square Enix let them play for hours, and people are saying that they saw more than they remember seeing from the original game.
Oh
That
yeah.
really tells you that they were true to their words of like really fleshing out sections for them to feel like a meaty RPG. And I tell you, I'll be okay if it's just like a 20-hour, 25-hour RPG. Kingdom Hearts 3 was that, and I was satisfied by that.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if we can get that out of that at this level of quality and polish, hell yeah, give me that. I don't need 120 hours that only I'm gonna enjoy 50 of them
Hmm.
because the whole thing is gonna be bloated. Like if it's with this level of care and love and craft, yeah. So I'm like this. But the was it episode 1 or 2 that we did our 5 most anticipated games?
Um,
I
I
think it
think
was the
that
second
was
episode.
yeah. It was either one or two.
Yeah, like, and I put Last of Us and Cyberpunk above this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the point in time, but I think this one just showed up for number one. And yes, and it's also coming up earlier. But yeah, it's just more like I always felt this game was gonna be kind of like the appetizer for the other two that are coming up. But just man, that's how much I enjoyed this demo. It was so yeah, I was like I immediately wanted to restart the demo again after I ended it. Because I was like, I need more. And we have to wait 5 weeks now for
I was
more.
just thinking about like going back as soon as I finish this. Was going to turn it back on and play it again just to feel something. You know.
Exactly, yeah. Back in the day, back in the PS3 era, I would like play demos to death if I liked them.
Same.
Like, yeah, I was like when I remember when the Force Unleashed demo came out,
I was about to say that one.
I played it so much. That
That
initial
demo
section,
was fire though, with the
yeah, it was.
ATST showing up as the final boss. And like
Yes.
they had like this montage of like quick cuts with awesome music, and I
Hmm.
was always just ready to go out and buy that game the second I finished it. I was like, "Let's
Exactly.
go!"
Yeah. Oh man. So if it feels good to be like, man, I wish more companies would feel more comfortable releasing demos, especially
Mm,
because they do demos, and those demos are like at PAX or at like E3. Like those demos exist.
mm.
Why not? Like yeah, why not release those demos a little bit later after you've shown it to the people? Because you know, because I heard that one of the reasons why people stopped doing demos was because they felt apparently they did weird market research that said that there's always a likelihood that when people play your demo, there's a likelihood that they will be less inclined to buy your game.
I mean, in
And
the grand scheme of it, there's probably a lot of games that are
mhm,
putting out demos, so of course there's going to be a lot of people that are going to play it and be like, "Oh, this is
exactly,
terrible."
exactly.
But
So
you
and
know,
there's some there are some games that historically have not demoed well, especially for the people at the press. I remember the original, not quite original, the first modern day Wolfenstein, the New Order. uh, Apparently the demo was so poor, like it was like so unbalanced and all that that they gave a lot of people so many bad vibes of that game that then by the time the actual game came out, everyone was blown away at how good it was, but it wasn't like representative of its demo. And same with the Evil Within, which ironically both of these games are Bethesda games.
mm,
um, the Evil Within apparently had one of the most disjointed demos ever. Like how like it changed tonally and from scene to scene and all of that. That didn't quite really convey the vibe of how weird you go through that game. Because that's the thing with
true.
the Evil Within is like so incredibly. You played Evil Within, right?
I have played it. I'm not
Yeah, the
finished
original.
it though.
Yeah, but if you remember when you're going through those chapters, how, especially when you go, oh man, I'm getting a call. Nah, muting. Sorry.
How dare
I'm in the
you,
middle.
Alejandro?
I'm in the middle of recording.
Turn
I
out your
already said
pockets in front of the class.
that. So yeah, and as you transition through like the through the mirrors and going through the different places and all that, it's like without that context, it does feel disjointed, but it makes sense in the context of that game.
Mm,
But that can be that can like unsell you if your demo is presented poorly. So I can understand why, but then we have like the Force Unleashed. Them completely sold me on that game. Like completely sold me. The Batman Arkham Asylum demo back in the day also
Oh
completely
yeah.
sold me on that game. Uh, and then and now even this one, Final Fantasy VII, even though I knew I was gonna buy it because it's considered one of like the bigger games of this year, and I had interest in it just based on the subject matter. It's like this demo really super sold me, and I feel like Square probably like especially Japanese Square Enix has probably one of their best games in years if everything turns out well on this one, and I'm so glad they blessed us with this demo. Oh man, it's what a time to be alive, Paul. What a
Hmm.
time to be alive. That a
True.
Final Fantasy VII remake is actually going to be good. But Paul, anything else you want to say about Final Fantasy?
Well, I did want to mention, I don't know if it was because I was playing on an old plasma screen TV. It was huge, but it was like an older, like maybe last decade made. And the initial opening screen, what the title crawl and all that good stuff was, of course, hyping me up and it looked gorgeous. And then when the smoke went up and it switched into gameplay, I could very clearly see a difference. So I'm hoping that that was just because of my TV, but it like the lines looked rougher for me.
It was definitely your TV because I have a different, because you said it was a plasma. I have an OLED, and the way some pixels are rendered in different TVs can make a difference. Because
That's what I'm thinking.
I did see a huge difference going from an LCD to an LED and then to an OLED.
Hmm.
And I tell you, sometimes especially in later ones, those kind of the actual rendering and detail display and all that can be influenced, and that happened more clear to me when I play Jedi Fallen Order because I have like a an old LED Panasonic TV in my second living room at home, and
Hmm.
then I have the OLED Sony 3D TV outside in the big TV. And for some reason, Jedi Fallen Order looked like two completely different games when I switched from TVs. So that tends to really affect that.
Hmm.
So yeah, just keep that in mind.
Yeah, I was
So
just thinking because there were times that Jedi Fallen Order just did not look good for a second.
mhm. The first
And
planet,
maybe
there is the first planet.
I think like the first two planets, if I'm remembering right. I just something looked off about the coloring.
The greens looked very washed, right? Like it was like a little washed out.
Yeah, or like
Yeah.
too saturated for me.
Mhm.
The greens
So
and the
yeah,
reds.
yeah. So people don't ignore this. Like TVs can make a difference. So don't
Hmm.
just buy any TV. As
Yeah.
and on this one, I think you may want to get a PS4 Pro for this one, especially if you have a 4K TV. I feel this is the kind of game that's gonna give that a huge workout and get you ready for PS5.
Yeah, already got
Uh,
one. Let's go.
yes, there you go. So yeah, all right, Paul. So I think that's as much as we can talk about a demo. So
Yeah,
let's
that's
yeah,
about everything. I'm
yeah,
just super excited and ready for what they got next.
exactly. So hey, we only have 5 weeks left. So super excited. But until then, we have to wait through so much, including like this huge avalanche of news and announcements. So
Which
yeah,
means, Alejandro, I need you to press X for some
for
news.
some news. Dun, 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 dun.
That's
Okay.
so it's yeah, with all this coughing that you have gotten and all this coronavirus concerns, it seems a lot of these companies are so scared of that because they're just canceling events left and right, like what happened with GDC,
Yeah.
which is the game developers conference that was supposed to happen next week, a very important week on a year where supposedly, allegedly, the consoles are still coming out because that's where Sony and Microsoft can go brief all game developers that get together to share their technologies and announce their new engines or any new updates for their engines and all this kind of stuff. And they go to like workshops on how certain developers develop something specifically and all that. The first one to drop out was Sony last week, whenever they also dropped out of PAX because of
Mm.
coronavirus concerns. That a lot of people were, especially me, I'll be the first one to say that initially when I saw that, I was like, that feels like a complete overreaction. And the way I'm reading it, it feels like Sony is just scared of even saying anything in public about PS5 because we still only have their logo. So it just felt like too much. But then when every other company started dropping out, it was like then Facebook dropped out, then Microsoft dropped out, then EA dropped out, and others started dropping out, including like some Chinese developers, which makes sense considering where the virus originated.
Mm.
Uh, there's just something about seeing how serious they're taking this that I'm really starting to get concerned about what that means for the rest of the year when it comes to like big events. And especially the thing that concerns me more is still China because Foxconn is still kind of like the place where they built a lot of the electronics. So, and with the continuous silence of some of these companies, it makes me wonder if like the console will still even release this year, but allegedly Foxconn's supposed to start work again, like at the end of the month, if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember when I read that. And obviously, Microsoft apparently is ahead of schedule because we got all those details last week. And Sony, they'll talk whenever they feel like it. Uh, but it's just so weird seeing how much of these cancellations are happening, and weird that E3 is still saying that they're moving forward despite the coronavirus concerns. That this thing is that if it keeps going, I bet you within a week or two, we're gonna see E3 dropping out also. But I feel they have invested. I feel E3 as an organization and the ESA are so invested in, especially this the E3 for this year because it's supposed to be like a different one for them,
Hmm.
a new one, so different that Jeff Keighley, the guy that hosted a E3 Coliseum, didn't feel like it was necessary for him to attend, considering he's been a mainstay, just like Sony used to be since around like the very first E3. Uh, so, what are your thoughts on this, Paul? Especially you being a fellow coronavirus patient zero.
Oh my gosh. Yeah,
By the
it
way,
was me,
just
everyone.
a
I
joke.
caused it. Just
Yeah,
want y'all to know.
yeah. So,
Um, I think the more I'm hearing about this with GDC just all around being postponed, it's starting to sound more like a genuine like health concern. Well, okay, there's two options. Normal bleeding heart Paul makes wants to believe that this is just, you know what, guys, this is like actually really both terrifying for the people that are not yet sick and also dangerous for people that are. We don't want this to spread even further because it's clearly spreading and killing people willy nilly. Um, the
and just to add, like apparently, like some of the few cases of coronavirus in the U.S. already claimed some victims. I think in Washington.
oh
So
geez.
yes,
So yeah, it is definitely nothing to laugh about. I know we've made jokes about it, but that was more for the sake of levity than dismissing the idea entirely. Like one of the
exactly.
other many issues that have been going on with the past sicknesses in recent years. But the other option that I was thinking about with GDC, if you have all the people leaving this one conference, what a better way to make sure you save a little face than to just postpone it and say it's due to health concerns about
Hmm.
wanting to make sure that you're taking care of your clientele, when in
Exactly.
reality you're realizing you're going to lose a butt ton of money
Hmm.
if you don't do it later.
And the thing is that what's interesting, apparently they postponed it all the way till July, from what I was reading.
Mm,
And that is very interesting because you usually this. Here's what's funny: like think about like the developers that are making games for next gen. They're waiting for the final specs to see how much they have to add or tweak in their games because they usually like especially in the transition towards a new console, they usually spec for PC and kind of like they start specking games to what they think the console's final specs will be, and then based on
mm,
whatever those and whatever the dev kits will allow them to, that's when they kind of like then adapt to that. They're still developing all this without hearing firsthand from like the place where they would have heard this, which was GDC. They're gonna go to E3 with what they currently have, and then after E3, they're gonna go to the games developers conference to hear about like the final specs of the consoles or like the development tools on because that's the things that they
mm.
share there. It really makes me feel like this is gonna be one of the messier E3s or more with the one or ones with the most false promises. unless somehow Sony right now are doing video conferences with literally everyone that they would have done at GDC, and even Microsoft is doing that. It just it just feels like it's incredible how much this sickness has completely like upended so much.
Mm,
Kind of like the normal order of things. GDC has always like till this year, GDC has always been in March, hasn't stopped. It's always been there,
mm,
and it's crazy. The kind of mess this whole virus is crafting, where we're not getting a reverse order, where E3 wants to still stick to its June thing, but the developers are not gonna go to like those workshops where they're gonna learn about how to better use these tools for next gen. That's gonna happen after E3, after they have probably announced most of games, if they announce them. So it's just oh man, like I don't know what else to say on this one. It's just
it's
what a year.
not. Yeah, it does seem kind of worrying to know that like these developers are going to be working with information, basically working without the information that they need,
Mm-hmm.
which means that either E3 is going to have some really pretty looking stuff that's not going to be realistic, or
Mm-hmm.
they're going to scale it back and people aren't going to be as confident as they once were. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, and knowing from like the behind the scenes perspective of these behind the scenes developers and the people that actually work on this thing, that's got to be a nightmare to them to know what they're working with.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, because and historically launch games are always gonna launch kind of undercooked in a way, because it's like it's them getting to grips with the hardware or
Mm,
having to cut corners to try to make launch. And the beauty of launching a game, of launching your game at launch, is that people will buy it no
hmm.
matter what. because
Absolutely.
uh because when you're buying a new console, you want something new to play on it. So even if the game they put out is hot garbage, you're still gonna buy it because you chalk it up to being a launch game, and you want something to play on the machine
Looking at
when you
you,
get them.
Killzone
So
Shadowfall.
yeah, no, it Kills and Shadowfall historically, like a game that, especially when you get to the later parts of that game, you see where they start cutting corners or how they were experimenting with some interesting ideas that they don't develop later. Uh,
Uh,
so, so yeah, it's like and back in the 360 era, Perfect Dark Zero, another example.
true.
Uh, and that game was lame AF. So yeah, it makes me worried about like the launches, if they're gonna get all this. I mentioned you, I would hope, especially in this new digital era, that Sony and Microsoft, I would even think Microsoft maybe be even more diligent, considering how closer they're to the developer, especially the American developers, and Sony being in the other side of the world and them being all weird right now. I would hope that they at least see that they take more diligence to make sure that all their developers know, because they need a little bit more lead time. Because getting knowing all final specs and everything by July, when your thing is supposed to launch in November, that only gives you 5 months. That sounds like disaster.
Hmm.
So but hey, maybe they already been briefed before and they were working on previous specs, and these are just like final specs. So what do we know? What I do know is that GDC being that late, considering what the GDC has been historically, especially during console launches. No bueno.
Hmm.
So yeah, yeah.
Next
I'm
thing.
getting a little. I'm getting a little worried about this next gen launch, Paul. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
It's yeah. There, it feels like a dark cloud is hovering over it, and I'm not. I don't feel too confident
I,
about it.
I sense a plot to destroy the Jedi.
Yeah, exactly.
In
The
all
shroud of the dark
honesty,
side
though,
surrounds all this.
I definitely would not be surprised if Sony came out finally after all this silence and said we have to push back the release of the PS5 to next year.
I'm literally awaiting it, especially considering the slate of games that they have right now. Like, especially when you compare to Microsoft, Microsoft barely has anything of like real consequence other than Halo Infinite
Hmm.
for this year. Obviously, they have Ori, and they have like that weird Ninja Theory 4v4 sword multiplayer game that's coming later this month. Also, that's
Hmm.
gonna be on Game Pass. I don't remember the name. I'll look it up later. Uh, when it comes to like the release schedule or in cadence, like Microsoft definitely feels like someone that's already has they're loading all their bullets for next gen. Whereas the PS4, like for anyone that's a PS4 owner, like remember that picture I showed you? like that. All those release dates that included Neo, Final Fantasy VII, that fighting game from Arc Systems that I don't remember what the name was. Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima, all of that. Like Sony, for they're well taken care of for this year. Like I
Mm,
feel they could afford to push back. The hard thing would be, what if Microsoft like pulls a 360 and just goes ahead, even if they're heavily supply constrained, just to say that they went first. When they went first, that helped them a lot.
hmm.
So,
A lot of
but
people would buy it.
yeah, exactly, and it could create another shift. As but if, especially considering Sony's silence and like the whole problem with them having trouble keeping the cost down with like the whole cooling system that is making them like cost $450 to like build a console according to the Bloomberg report. Yeah, I'm just yeah, I'm until Sony says everything, I'm just still perpetually worried about the PS5, and I hate feeling that being my console of choice. Is like, yeah, it's like it just feels like they're like on a crash course.
Mm.
It just feels like that, and we're still waiting for it to hit, especially because they're not doing enough stuff to weather the storm, to say the least. But yeah, but hey, enough fear mongering for this.
Yeah, let's jump
And
to a short but very happy little thing next. How
yeah,
about which I have to say happy birthday, Alejandro, but not to you
yeah, I know. Happy
because
birthday, Nintendo Switch.
which yeah, as of recording right now, it is March 3rd, and therefore the birthday of the Nintendo Switch 3 years ago. And
Can you believe it's been
mm,
3 years of that thing?
uh, sometimes yes, sometimes it feels like it hasn't been enough time.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that it's already been 3 years, and in only 3 years, that thing has already sold slash shipped 52 million units. It has sold like 310 million games combined. Like of every game that has come to that system, that's how much it has sold.
Hmm.
And five of its exclusives have sold like 16 million units each. Like if we make like an average, like coming from the Wii U to this, like I know we celebrated like the Nintendo Switch like overtaking the Xbox One. At least
Hmm.
the reported sales of the Xbox One from last we heard numbers. Um, and for it to be like 3 years, coming from a time where people are saying that Nintendo was dying because the Wii U was such a commercial disaster of
Yeah.
every angle imaginable. I know some people like to defend that console. Looking at you, Parker, but yeah, because the Wii U was a complete disaster. Like it's Fisher Price like gamepad tablet that never got taken advantage of. Like coming literally at the tail end of a generation with power that was even weaker than the Xbox 360 as we were moving into the PS4, Xbox One generation. It never even had like a proper Mario game, and even its own unique Zelda game eventually got ported to the Switch. It's like the Wii U is such a weird footnote
Hmm.
in Nintendo, especially compared to like the big successes that came before it and after it. Like before the Wii U, the Wii that sold 101 million units, and the Switch that is now like in 3 years already halfway through. It's on par to like being in the same numbers as the Wii.
Hmm.
If it's yeah, it's like congrats Nintendo. Like just real quick, Paul, gun to your head, what's your favorite Switch game?
Probably Breath of the Wild or Smash
Amen.
Bros. Ultimate.
Amen. Breath of the Wild. Moving on. So, because it's enough said. Breath of
Yeah.
the Wild, like one of the best games ever made. So, yeah, I can't wait for that sequel whenever they. Or you know what, Paul?
Oh
I
boy.
can't wait to know what else will come to the Switch because apparently Nintendo only has effing Animal Crossing. And apparently they don't want to say anything so that people buy that freaking Animal Crossing. So, Paul, we're literally 180 days since the last Nintendo
Oh,
Direct.
oh, that's what we're talking about. Okay,
Jesus Christ.
we got into a real like conspiracy theorist tone there, and I was not sure where to go with it.
No, but literally, Paul, I think by today it's like 180 days since the last proper Nintendo Direct on September 4th, 2019.
I feel like they're
Nin-
sitting on something, but they don't want to show us.
yeah, exactly. No, what I feel is that they really want people to be starved to death of new games, that they want people to buy Animal Crossing. So, And you know what? I don't care about that game, so I'm not gonna buy
Mm,
a real life simulation when I have to literally see a family business that's kind of like that. So I don't want that in my escapist. I'm sorry, Nintendo. So hopefully, the day after Animal Crossing releases, they actually drop an actual Nintendo Direct, because apparently there was like rumor mongering that they're actually just gonna wait until E3. That
oh,
would be hilarious. That would be hilarious, especially how things are looking. Because by that point, after Animal Crossing releases, it will be April and E3 is in June. So why not wait?
yeah.
So, but maybe on the flip side, by them being this quiet, then they're really loading the gun.
Hmm.
You know what I think it probably is,
Mm,
Paul? I feel they're really trying to load the gun because of the new generation launching this year, and all the chatter that it should pick up around that time, especially because E3 is gonna be all Microsoft. Sony will be whenever it happens, but Sony is gonna steal the thunder whenever they actually talk. Where does that leave the Nintendo Switch, which will be a generation behind them? Maybe having a huge roster of games
well,
is the way that
technically,
they are.
wouldn't you say that the Switch was a generation ahead?
Yes, and release wise, no in technology.
That's fair. Yeah.
So yeah, because yeah, the Switch came out after Xbox One and PS4.
Oh yeah, of
It's
course.
markedly weaker than base Xbox One and PS4.
Oh yeah.
So and these machines are gonna take a leap forward this year. So and Nintendo already said they're not gonna do any Switch Pro. So it's yeah, I think maybe that's what's happening. Maybe they're just loading the gun because they probably are trying to stack as many games possible to really make a big splash. Because
Hmm.
right now, just the new consoles are the big splash. But as they do this, they're literally leaving thousands and millions of fans starving in the wild. Because September 4th, 2019, Paul, think about that. Tomorrow it's gonna be, let me count, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 7 months since the last true Nintendo Direct. And no, Pokemon Directs and Animal Crossing Directs don't count. So those are just game specific.
I think
We're
y'all
talking
are
about
spoiled because Nintendo talks to y'all so often. But since I
exactly.
haven't been paying attention to those, I feel like y'all are freaking out over
No,
nothing.
here's the thing. When you set expectation that you're gonna feed us every couple of months, almost with no fail, with probably a week or two of difference from years for lots of years, and then suddenly you're kind of like empty-handed, and you have not loaded your gun, and you expect us to not be like all anxious, especially when you haven't even come out and say, hey, there's not gonna be one. They're just like in complete silence, kind of like. So I feel like I'm like a junkie right now,
Hmm.
waiting for my fix.
You sound
so
like my cat after I've forgotten to feed him for an hour. It's
so
like
yeah,
I'm off doing my thing, and he's like yelling at me, and I just don't hear him because I'm doing something else. And then eventually, I'm gonna come out, and he's gonna be laying on the ground like, "Why did you forget me?" And he'll go,
yeah.
"Oh, my bad."
How can you forsake us? But yeah, but hey, that was like my rant for today. Nintendo, it's gonna be 7 months tomorrow. Hopefully, once you're done, like trying to drive all your people to freaking Animal Crossing, maybe you'll remember us, all the other fans that like different kinds of games, the ones that you successfully placated last year when you had so many amazing Nintendo Directs last year. That's what's so funny. Last year it was like the three ones that they did releasing all like announcing all those games. Literally were like that's how Mario Maker 2 got announced, and even Astral Chain, all of that. Luigi's Mansion 3.
Mm.
Well, no, that was Luigi's Mansion 3 was announced the year before, but more details came out for that. Yeah, don't forget to feed us, Nintendo. We don't all care about Animal Crossing. That's how I live it. But it's a good thing other developers are not like starving me for content, because kind of like I was mentioning earlier when we were playing, like literally next week the new season for Destiny 2 comes out, and
That
they
it
announced it
does.
with a big trailer. The funny thing is that these seasons can also be considered like mini expansions,
They
if you
really
want to call.
it did look like an expansion actually
Yep,
when I
but it's
saw
not.
it.
But they're not. They're just like seasons, kind of like in the vein of like when Apex Legends switched to season 4, or even like when Fortnite switches to seasons. But like Destiny being such an aesthetic game, and like how like how like they go hard with their aesthetics, and how long it takes them to actually like build those aesthetics based on like behind the scenes works that they show that the technology to build Destiny, it's a little hard for them to work with, hence why they don't usually update it too much usually during a season. But yeah, the next season for Destiny 2 is called Season of the Worthy, which is I focused on something called, I don't remember what the name of this ship is. Do you remember playing the campaign for Destiny 2?
I do.
Yeah, so remember there was like this big ship that was absorbing the sun, like near the end of the campaign.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so
I don't
it's
remember
like a
it,
destroyer. It's
but
like a weird. Let's call it the destroyer. Let's
sure.
just call it that, or the Beyond, or whatever it was called. So that ship is literally hurtling to Earth, and the whole season is to like set up some like defenses across the solar system, to like protect you from that destructive ship that's like going coming to Earth, and new weapons, new activities, new battle pass, and also the reintroduction of something that made Destiny very popular in Destiny 1 is something they call Trials of Osiris. So, Paul, how big are you into 3v3 multiplayer?
Um, well, I play Apex enough, so
Yeah,
only 3 players, yes, but not as
exactly.
much 3v3.
Exactly. So obviously, an Xbox Lions is 3 player. It's 3v21,
Right,
kind of.
basically.
But yeah, Destiny One, like, why that
Okay, there
game
we
became so vibrant, especially in the PvP community,
go. Hmm.
was this weekend trial. It's this weekend tournament called Trials of Osiris. That it was like a super hardcore 3v3 multiplayer. It's just basically elimination. It's kind of like gunfight in Modern Warfare, the 2v2.
Okay, I'm
That's
following
like,
you.
yeah. So that's what made gunfight so fun for me, because it was like, oh, this reminds me of Trials of Osiris
Hmm.
from Destiny One. So it's super sweaty multiplayer that literally rewards you if you go on a streak of like 10 wins in a row,
Oh my
and
gosh.
you're actually matched with people with your same connection speed and your same level. So it's like the balance is like on the connection, but like you got to bring your A game with like the different guns that you can do in Destiny, because you have like so many different permutations and like the different powers and all that. And it has a very exclusive. If you go to just 10 wins in a row, you go to like a victory place called the Lighthouse that has like super cool loot that you can't get anywhere else, and
Hmm.
you can like and you can like display that loot with huge vanity to people, and to be like, oh my god, this guy went flawless in trials. And that was some of the most fun PvP back in the day.
Hmm.
And they tried to do that similarly at the beginning of Destiny 2 with something called Trials of the Nine, but this time it was 4v4, and the combat sandbox was different. At that point, it wasn't as good, and they retired it. So they retired it back in 2018. And they spent like 2 years trying to bring this mode back,
Dang.
and they're like, we're taking this long because we want to make it right, because Trials was like literally at the time when because the original Destiny suffered from content drops in a way that Destiny 2 didn't, kind of, especially compared 1 to 1. But Destiny 1, during its content drops, Trials of Osiris kept it alive, and especially alive and thriving in Twitch.
Hmm.
Like, people loved watching those tournaments because they're crazy. It was like, especially with like the superpowers flying and some of resurrections happening at the very last minute, or people getting their snipers ready to know when they're gonna self resurrect so they can like headshot them as soon as they're in the middle of resurrection,
Jeez.
or people coming in clutch, saving their power right at the end. If they're like 3v1, oh, he saved his power and then he completely overturned it. It's like really cool tournament. Whenever it starts, I'm gonna link you to Twitch so you can see how crazy the gameplay of that thing gets.
Yeah,
So,
please do. That sounds
oh
wild.
yeah, so yeah, I'm gonna like keep up with like my favorite Destiny streamers on next week to see what they say how the new seasons are, because I want to see if I want to dive in immediately, because remember, the release tsunami is happening and I can't have my crack addiction
True.
happening in the middle of it, because I'm just gonna neglect everything else. So Paul, take this new one.
Well, yes. So I was reading in an article that was either of today or yesterday, and the producer of the Final Fantasy VII Remake, Yoshinori Kitase, he was talking like at length about the whole process, which was actually really nice. I have it pulled up so I can just kind of flip through it as I need to. And he was one of the people that originally worked on it, and he
Yeah,
still
he
to
was the
this
original
day,
director.
yeah,
Mhm.
he considers that to be one of his like most enjoying and fulfilling jobs that he's ever done, was working on Final Fantasy VII. Um, and I think he said he worked on like Chrono Trigger and something else as well.
Mhm.
But anyway, so to the fact that like getting to know this guy who was clearly there from the beginning and just hearing his like the clear passion just from like the small amounts of quotes that they gave from him was really kind of refreshing to see the efforts that he's been going through. But one of the things specifically that he said that I wanted to bring up was how he says he wants to work either on the remake or on Final Fantasy VII until he retires. And then the second thing he said was he wants to keep releasing Final Fantasy VII every generation to a new audience. And I wanted to bring that up for you for maybe a quick discussion
Mhm.
on what do you think of like how does this come from, like where do you draw the line between a very passionate developer that wants to show his work to everyone and to continue to make it relevant and to always be working on it, and somebody who is stuck in like the Skyrim syndrome, basically, where
Mhm.
you have like one side where it's like you have so much work put into this, you want to make it better, you want to release it to everyone else when you add more to it, give them more of this work, and where does it become too much where it's like, hey, it lived its life, it's time to move on.
So, so it's a question with different answers and many different answers of equal importance. So I find it hilarious that he said that Mr. Katase is saying this because well, something that was so hilarious during the terrible Square days during the PS3 era was how unreluctant they were on re-releasing Final Fantasy VII because that was when they were
Just
working
I don't
on
want
the
to
pat.
interrupt you, but it's just reluctant, not unreluctant.
Yeah, no, it's just because they had a huge reluctancy of even releasing or even because here's what's funny, they teased a Final Fantasy VII remake
Yes,
or the idea of a remake back in 2005 during the
they showed it on a
PS3
tech
reveal.
demo
Yeah, it was like a tech demo.
and it
That's a
blew me away at the time.
yeah, exactly. So the idea was like seated there, but they had this insistence on just working on Final Fantasy 13 during that time, and I think Final Fantasy 12 was being worked on at that time because, yeah, because Fantasy 12 came out in 2006, and that tech demo was shown in 2005. So yeah, so I feel they just had they had this reluctancy on wanting to work on that because they just wanted to do that new stuff. And then I think finally, after many years of people basically rejecting their new stuff, like Final Fantasy 13 initially reviewed well, but it's one of the most hated Final Fantasies these days.
Mhm.
Like absolutely hated. It's like it started the whole like Final Fantasy 13 specifically started the whole meme. It gets good 40 hours in where
Yeah.
where that game was completely on rails and then suddenly it opened up near the end like in chapter 12 of like 13 chapter or chapter 11 of like 12 chapters. I don't know
Mhm.
if I'm trying to remember.
Something like that.
uh and to me, like I actually pushed through because I had never hated a game like I had Final Fantasy 13 like I did back in 2010
Hmm.
because I had there are very weird, especially here in El Salvador. And there's a group of people that, for some reason, everything Final Fantasy gets them all hot and bothered all the time. Like
Like in a good way or a
it's
bad way?
they get aroused. Let's keep that.
Okay, okay.
That's just
I thought like
a
hot and bothered can be either like they absolutely hate it and they will murder you if you mention it,
uh,
or hot and
oh no,
bothered in like a good way.
yeah, hot and bothered. Let's say it's a hot and bothered in a good way, especially
Okay,
because of the pretty visuals and all that. It's
got
like
it.
yeah, for some reason like it's that kind of series that like brings that kind of devotion from its devoted in a way. So it was at a time where like I was one of the few that had a 360 and a PS3, and I had friends that literally bought PS3s for Final Fantasy 13. and I had not played a Final Fantasy game before at that point. I heard of the series. Like I mentioned, I was not into turn-based. So, you know how you sometimes feel peer pressured into getting something just to be part of the conversation instead
Oh
that you
yeah.
play it? That happened to me, and boy, did I hate it every freaking minute of it. And I
Hmm.
hated how beautiful it was because that was as big the schism of uh, of how pretty it was and how much I hated playing it was
Hmm.
such that it actually made me like it literally made me the angriest I ever been in a console generation having to play through that game. As how linear it was and how unfair, like really cheap some of the combat got, even if it looked flashy. And hearing how my friends actually were okay with that, especially and they were not even bothered how that game worked compared to how like I was that completely hated it. And reading how I was like, wait, just wait until it opens up, it gets really good. And having to push myself to get there and being like, this wasn't worth it. And I never even finished it. I
Hmm.
stopped at the open section. And yeah, and they kept insisting. They did Final Fantasy 13 too, which I didn't get because
Nope.
I felt burned. And then they did Lightning Returns Final Fantasy 13, which was like the third one that
I got
apparently was pretty
that one,
bad.
and I did
And
not like it.
yeah, I heard it was bad.
It
So
wasn't like terrible, but it had that Majora's Mask feel where you had to keep like resetting
mhm,
time, and I hate that concept because I just get anxiety from it.
exactly. So that didn't feel too appealing to me personally. So I said, nope, no thanks. So it's funny saying this that the shift to Final Fantasy VII actually. Do you know how this remake actually got up and running?
Hmm.
Like this, back in the original PSX from 2014, in December 2014, they actually had a trailer for Final Fantasy VII that they were releasing it on PS4, but it was the original PC, like the PC version with the square, with like the squared, blocky
Oh,
character
just so
model.
like not changed. It was just an original.
Yeah, but the way the trailer was like presented, it was like, oh my god, the Final Fantasy VII remake is happening, but it wasn't. It was like the biggest troll
I
in
know. I kind of remember that now.
in conference history because then the president of Square Enix came out laughing. it
Oh
was
gosh.
and like he was laughing but still sort of said, yeah, we're bringing back Final Fantasy 7. It's gonna be in your modern console. It's gonna have trophies. And everyone at the crowd, because it started cheering immediately because it's like, oh my god, it's happening. And no, it didn't. And then
Hmm.
they literally the next E3, boom, Final Fantasy 7 remake.
Yeah.
Apparently, despite many people begging for it since the PS3 days, their reaction at that PSX was finally the thing that prompted them to be like, maybe we should, because they were still working on 15 then, and obviously 15 came and went. Funny that it just like after 10 years it kind of released and fizzled out, and people don't even talk about it anymore, which is hilarious. Um, because it feels like a game that completely vanished, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, so like it completely didn't make any blip in pop culture. Like it was like it was just like, yeah, it was in development for so long and it's done.
Really
And
though.
yeah, exactly. So it's interesting that that was definitely not a, how can I say, yeah, that was not their mentality back then. They wanted to keep making good. They wanted to keep making new stuff, but probably they saw the numbers and they saw the interest. It's probably why why like be stubborn and not do it. So yeah, it makes sense. At the same time, we are also moving into the backward compatibility era. You're already remaking it like you're remaking it.
Hmm.
Why are you gonna keep remaking it? Like I can see upressing it as is already with this all character models and kind of like taking advantage of like every generation in a way, but
Oh, let me explain as well. Generation as in like every 10 to 20 years, not generation of consoles.
yes,
Okay, I just want to make
but
sure
then
that was
even the yeah, exactly. But even then, like now it's become very clear things are going to be backwards compatible,
mm,
and not only going to be backwards compatible, like even if things are forward compatible, they're going to be patched up. Kind of like what the Cyberpunk announcement last week was. Remember that if you get the Xbox One version, you're
hmm.
going to get the Xbox Series X upgrades at no extra cost
Right.
through forward compatibility. So we're reaching that. So in a way, the way it is that I think when Mr. Hitachi is saying, I don't want to work anymore. I just want to do the bare minimum of pressing this thing and call it a day. At least that's how I see it. So
Oh, I do want to clarify, based on the way he's writing this, he wants to genuinely remake the game every generation to like add to it, to bring more out of it, to like flesh out the story even further, to add things that he didn't think of the first time. And
you know what that screams to me?
mm,
Star Wars Special Edition.
yeah, most likely. Now, I'm not going to defend it directly, like until it's my turn at least, because I do get the same feeling of like the George Lucas that has this exact world that he has built. He is content with that, and he has this story that he loves so much that he wants to add more things to it. And I would say, power to him. If you want to add things to it, that's great. Not at the detriment of what was there to begin with, or whereas like for right now, what Yoshinori Kitase would do that would be as bad as what George Lucas did would be to delete every inkling of the original Final Fantasy VII ever, never let you play it, never let you find it,
Mm-hmm.
and then keep releasing his stuff and saying this is your only option, now buy it.
Mm-hmm.
What
Which is what George Lucas did. So
exactly?
that the originals are so incredibly hard to find that now we have to live with McClunky forever. So
Don't you dare say that word in my face.
McClunky.
I will back out of this so quick. Anyway.
So but yeah, it just feels like this remake right now makes sense. It's a PS1 game.
Hmm.
Looking at that game right now is beyond horrific. Like it just is. From like 2020 lens.
It is
The
difficult.
yeah, it's incredibly difficult. No matter how much nostalgia you want, like 3D games in that era just don't hold up well. They're not SNES games that stand the test of time, and even the nostalgia carries it. Like not much nostalgia can carry that any newcomer to play Final Fantasy VII for the first time in that PS1 blocky look. You just can't. So the remake right now makes perfect sense, and the things that
Hmm.
they're doing, it feels like they're really enhancing it. Just keeping working on it, then from there, then that's getting into Star Wars Special Edition territory. And also it's like you already remade it and backwards compatibility exists. Let it be. Now work on Final Fantasy 16 afterwards. Like you're finally giving fans what they wanted. They wanted a new one. Keep
Hmm.
it keep it there, and backward and forward compatibility will keep that game alive, because now it's because the thing is the way it's been modeled and it's been created and the level of detail it has right now, this is gonna stand the test of time for 10 to 20 years compared to like the blockiness. It's actually people now.
Right.
So yeah, it's different. So it's yeah, it's a loaded question, and I feel it has its pros and it has its cons.
Hmm.
It has a place and time right now in 2020. I don't see it having a place and time with the way consoles are going more towards the PC forward compatibility thing. That everything just works. You can still play a lot of old PC games on your PC with like just a few tweaks here and there. You can make them work. So yeah, and I would say yeah, it's like the whole Skyrim thing. Look how long it's gonna take Bethesda to not release Elder Scrolls 6,
Hmm.
like because of how much they just like kept milking that Skyrim cow dry. So, but hey, if it keeps selling, I mean, at the end, these companies want to make money, and for doing Final Fantasy VII, it's strictly a money thing. Fans ask for it, and they're getting it, and apparently they're getting it good based
Hmm.
on our demo. So,
True that. Well, I feel like we could talk about that part for a while, but I would say let's jump into our last little segment. Our last piece of news is that one, I didn't even realize this, but apparently the PlayStation View shut down.
oh, you didn't know? Yeah,
No,
they
that was
announced.
news
Yeah,
to me.
yeah, they announced that they were ending it around the last 3 months of last year. I think it was either in October or November that they announced that they were shutting off PlayStation View because they just didn't see the value of it anymore.
Right, which
And
I saw like the details of it in this article saying that everybody like across the board, like the YouTube TV and the Hulu TV and stuff had to raise their prices bid
Mm-hmm.
like to actually stay competitive, and
Mm-hmm.
PlayStation, they said they weren't willing to do that, and so they just
Mm-hmm.
said they would shut down the system. Which I was like, yeah, I'd bow out when you can.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
It is just another Sony thing that they invested in and just walked away from.
Hmm.
Add chucked that up to PlayStation 3D. Remember when that was a thing?
True.
Yeah, they invested so much and then completely dropped support of that. And initially, PlayStation Move was that. They invested so much in
Yes,
that, and then they dropped it. And then PlayStation Move found life again with PSVR. That
I
was like
feel like that was
sli-
almost serendipity,
sleight of hand.
though.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
yeah.
Okay, that was complete serendipity. That was like, um, they already had the technology, and it was a way for them to like move on used stock.
Hmm.
Because especially you having worked at GameStop, I can imagine you had a lot of Move ones.
Oh, yes. It
Yeah,
was
sitting
such
there.
a
Yeah.
save for all these people were like, "Hey, I got VR. Would you look at that? We have all these really discounted controllers that nobody bought or they traded in because they didn't want the move anymore."
Exactly, and then you know how old it is because it still has the old USB.
Yeah.
Not even the USB that you charge your PS4 controllers. And we're moving to USB-C, so that like those PlayStation Move controllers are like even two generate they are literally two generations behind at this point,
Yeah, they're going to have to
which is
work on that.
exactly. So Sony has that weird tendency that outside of like their main console, especially on PlayStation, like PlayStation 1, 2, and 4 huge successes. PS3 eventually got there, but all this periphery stuff, the iToy, I don't know if you remember the iToy from PS2,
Oh,
the PlayStation camera,
I
like
do
all of this.
remember that.
Yeah, so like all of this kind of stuff that they have been things that Sony toyed around with and they just fizzled out. PlayStation VR surprisingly has been something that they've been really consistent. And what's ironic is that PSVR has sold even less than the PlayStation Vita that they completely threw to the wolves and completely abandoned and left for dead after only supporting it for like a year and a half and then moving just to PS4. They have shown more resilience with supporting VR, but
Hmm.
Sony has a little bit of a graveyard, uh, and the things that they have dipped their toes in, and View is one of them. And do you ever try View?
Nope, but I like that it was just an option at the time. Um,
I did the trial for the Super Bowl 2 years ago,
oh
and
yeah,
it was fine. Yeah, and it was fine. The thing is that you're gonna laugh. Why
mm,
I didn't continue using it?
I'm listening.
The the CW wasn't in there, so
Gosh,
so
I'm
so I
not
didn't.
laughing. I'm just disappointed, Alejandro. You have
Hey,
a problem, dude.
dude, I like those DC shows a lot.
Freaking
Those are
Shadowhunter lover.
yeah, but Shadowhunter's freeform, so
Uh,
that's a different. But it's on the
I'm just
it's
saying,
still
it's the same mentality, okay?
yeah, it's kind of like the same mentality. So, and that's where you know why I invest in those shows a lot because
Mm.
I know they're not gonna get canceled because CW has a very
Ooh.
and lo and behold, like Arrow made it 8 years. Even if less than a million people started like while watching it live by the end. So which for other networks, if you're like an NBC, that would get you canned immediately.
Mhm.
Uh, and that's why I like investing in them because they care more about internet numbers. They care more about like their Netflix deals and all of that because that's where the majority of the audience and how the shows actually got bigger than just watching live on the network. So
Mhm.
that's why I invest in those shows and HBO. HBO is the other ones that I invest because they do value quality a lot. So, but I don't invest in shows on NBC, Fox, ABC, or CBS because of those things that you never know when things are gonna get canceled, and I don't want to be invested in something that's just gonna get canceled. That doesn't happen in the CW. In fact, the CW is so respectful of their shows that even something that's like not performing well, they renewed for like 6 episode final season, something like that, just for there to be some sort of wrap up. So
You could
that's why,
argue that's more like Captain Jack Sparrow hanging off the edge of his ship as it sinks as it runs into the harbor. But I appreciate the effort that they go through at least.
yeah. And most of those shows, for all their cringiness, are good more often than not. I'll say that, and I stand by it. So not
Well,
Supergirl though. Supergirl is cringy AF. So that one I'm not gonna defend.
which
That
hurts my
one,
soul. I try to watch it.
yeah, and the thing is that I feel the first season kind of got away with it. in a way that it was still enjoyable. Then from season 2 onwards, it started to get a little too political and a little too feminist first. And I think what sucks is that they actually have a really great Superman
Yeah,
there and a really great Lex
that's why I
Luthor.
want to watch it, but like I can't.
But here's the thing: there's gonna be a Superman show with that Superman. It's gonna be
Excuse
called
me?
Superman. Yeah, they're making a Superman and Lois show. It's called, and with the Superman that they introduced in Supergirl, he's getting his own show for
Oh
next
my
year.
gosh,
So,
yes.
so yeah. So then for people that don't want to like watch even though Supergirl has gotten better in season 4 and 5, it's still nothing that I'm actively watching. I'm just catching up on recaps and all that, and
Hmm.
watching if there's like crossovers. And I leave it for Netflix because at least I can fast forward on some stuff.
Wait, you can.
Because I'm other
Oh yeah, I guess fast forward. I was.
Netflix.
Yeah,
And I can read what were the good episodes, what were the bad episodes. I'm only going to watch that. Boom, I'm out. So
true.
yeah, but yeah, that's why going back to PlayStation View, like I mentioned, like my investment with the CW is because of those superhero shows and the fact that I know they're not gonna get canceled. Those I
Hmm.
know that because I have had many heartbreaks of getting invested in shows that just ended prematurely. Terminator: The Sarah Connor Chronicles is still a sting in my heart.
Oh,
That's still to this day, like the way that show ended, and how it ended, and how it ended so unconclusively, sucks. Heroes. I don't know if you remember NBC's Heroes.
I
A
remember
show
hearing
that
about it.
yeah, Heroes was a show that had one great season and then just kept going downhill, and they didn't even have the decency of ending with respect and with a proper ending. It ended canceled. Uh,
Didn't they get a sequel series though?
yeah, it tried getting a sequel series that was just as bad, if not worse.
Oh,
And what's worse, here's what's funny: that sequel series ended on a cliffhanger, even though it was a mini series.
huh.
That's what made it hilarious. It was like, oh, you brought the show back because the previous one ended on a huge cliffhanger and so unconclusive, and you're ending it here, and you're opening the book again, and you're canceled. It was wow. That was literally the last NBC like original that I saw. uh Comedies in NBC last a little bit longer. That's like the difference, but actual genre shows, nope.
Mm.
So, but yeah, PlayStation View, RIP. But that's not the entirety of the news, because this is hilarious, and this explains a lot why this wasn't there. Hulu TV.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was what Sony used to not want anything because they were in competition, but now they've put
Hmm.
in Hulu TV alongside I think YouTube TV as an alternative for people that want to stay off cable.
Hmm.
Excuse me, and
And I would say
uh,
Hulu TV does have the CW. So yeah.
that it does. They also
Yeah,
have wonderful things like Rick and Morty, Brooklyn
yeah.
Nine Nine.
Hmm.
They had something else that I wanted to watch at some point. Bob's Burgers, because that's not on Netflix
A
anymore.
lot of the anime is there. Cowboy Bebop.
Yeah, which is some garbage that they took that off because Crunchyroll and Funimation couldn't settle their differences.
Wait. They took out Cowboy Bebop.
I think so. Last I checked, I don't think it's on Crunchyroll anymore.
Oh, okay. So you're talking that they because it's now on Hulu. They took it out of Crunchyroll.
Well,
Okay, that.
other way around. They took it off Crunchyroll, so now it's on Hulu.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, that makes more
Same
sense.
thing
Yeah.
with Yu Yu Hakusho. That was the other one I wanted to watch,
Yeah.
but took that off Crunchyroll too at the time.
Yeah, I remember the last thing that I was watching on Hulu a lot when I still cared about that show was Agents of Shield.
Ooh, yeah.
But
And
yeah,
that's now on Netflix too.
exactly. But the thing is that it always was on Hulu, but then whenever the season ended, then it made it on Netflix like a month and a half after during the summer.
Gotcha.
My thing is that to me, Agents of Shield completely dropped the ball after season 5. It should have ended on season 5. It's a show that to me never fulfilled its potential. So
Yeah,
I didn't even I'm not even gonna bother with watching season 7, especially because Marvel TV is officially moving forward their Disney Plus shows. So everything that
right.
was TV afterwards that was quote unquote it's all connected. It's all getting Thanos snapped. Like it wasn't even bad. Like it didn't even matter.
But you gotta
So
respect that Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. walked so all these other shows could run because they did
yeah.
it before all the others, this tying into the events of the movies, and you could exactly like chronologically time when an episode happened right after a certain movie
Yes.
because it totally shook the whole realm of the world they were in.
Yeah, and but the thing is that that was I feel the only way that that really worked was in the first season with the whole Hail Hydra thing.
Yeah,
That
very true.
the episode before Captain America Winter Soldier and the one afterwards, how like it really tied in that way. But then you started really seeing how the movies never made direct reference towards the TV
Right.
show. That's when everything broke down for me because it was like during Captain America Winter Soldier it made sense it didn't directly mention it because it was implied it was freaking Shield coming down, and the episode was
Right.
called Agents of Shield, so the movie didn't need to spell anything at that point. But then suddenly, like the show was always adapting itself to what was happening at the movies without the movies ever even throwing a bone. To
Hmm.
the point where then like the movie skipped 5 years ahead with Endgame, completely,
True.
completely leaving anything with Shield completely in the dark. So it was like I always felt bad for them because it always felt like a second. They always felt like second tier citizens, kind of like stuck in the back in the parking lot.
The
So
stepchild.
yeah, they were the unwanted section, and actually they were because Agents of Shield was like a TV show made by the Marvel TV division that wasn't the movie division.
Oh, you're right.
Because the movie division of Marvel and the TV division of Marvel were like at odds, especially because the movie side was being taken more by Disney, while the TV side was also being headed by the comic side by the main Marvel dude called Ike Perlmutter, which is like a very had been a very controversial figure uh, as of recently, especially he was a very he was the reason why Marvel took so long to have like a female superhero on the movies because he was so very against that idea when he was still kind of trying to control what was happening with the movies and Kevin Feige was like butting heads with that dude. Um, the TV side was on that side and it was completely outside Kevin Feige's control. That was never on his plan. That's why the movies never reference that, which is why these new TV shows in Disney Plus are going to be different because now they are Kevin Feige. It's part of his plan.
Hmm.
So, but hey, Agents of Shield, like the idea of the TV show connecting to a movie, that was really cool at a time. Until you saw that it wasn't, and especially how ignored everything ended up being, and then everything getting canceled. It was sad. So,
True that.
which is why I always say that it's always I like the DC approach of the multiverse. You can have all these different versions. You don't have to be tied to whatever one is doing to the other. Yes, connecting everything is cool, but it isn't if that connection it's only beneficial on one side and not the other. Because then the other side just feels limited. Whereas when everything is a multiverse, you have complete freedom. You can do everything else, and it all exists. So, but yeah, Hulu TV. Going back to that from this tangent, I just find it hilarious that this is not the first time that that has happened with Sony. EA Access. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I have, but I never really put much thought into it.
So EA Access, literally, you can consider that um, that was the precursor to Game Pass, a subscription that got you all those games that you can download. In that case, it was EA's games. For a mere $5 a month, you could get like all the battlefields, the Need for Speeds, the FIFAs that were available at the time, and all that. And that was only on Xbox One in 2014. Sony didn't want to have that service because they felt that would like go against PlayStation Now. But 5 years later, EA Access made it to PlayStation. So it doesn't surprise me with the death of PlayStation View, Hulu TV, now it's there. Funny how that
Hmm.
works.
Really though,
Yeah, it's
the time moves on, right?
exactly. Not only time moves on, but you know how prickly Sony is as a company.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, so
Well, I think that's
Paul,
about it for us.
yeah, meaty episode, more meaty than I anticipated.
True
So,
that.
Paul, where can people find you?
They can find me once again at Angel Sword 21, all one word, capital A. You can find that on Twitch. You can find that, I believe, on Instagram. You can find that in its own form on YouTube as Dork of Art. My gamer tag is the same, but the title is different. And for you, Alejandro?
They can find me on Instagram at alejandro.segovia93 and on Twitter at 8 underscore Dro Segovia. And you can find me at my PSN ID. It's called Giant Slayer 007, a game at a gamer tag and slash PSN ID that I have had since 2006.
Well,
And I don't
power
have,
to you, Alejandro, for
yeah.
sticking to your guns on that one.
Hey, I like slaying my giants,
True that. And
Uh,
pretending to be James Bond at the same time, I guess.
oh yes, absolutely. So Paul, I hope that you feel better for the next time that we record. Take some meds, stay on the drugs, and for everyone that listens, we appreciate you listening to us. And until next time, remember
Press X to
to
play.
play.
Night,
Hasta la
everyone.
vista, hasta la vista, baby.